Hello, and welcome back to User Story Basics. In part two, we're going to look at the three C's of user stories. In our first part of User Story Basics, we introduced the idea of a user story as being something that you use to capture a valuable feature or capability to a user in a couple of sentences. And we made the argument that that was important because you could quickly deliver something of value to the stakeholder and get feedback from them so you could determine whether or not you were working in that valuable green or in that wasteful red. So you're probably thinking, okay, well, that's really good, Steve, but how exactly am I supposed to write software from that? So this is why we'll introduce the so-called three C's of the user stories. Now, the three C's stand for card, conversation, confirmation. The three C's were coined by Ron Jeffries in a blog he posted a number of years ago, but effectively they help us understand how user stories work at capturing something that's valuable from the stakeholder and how we can use them to create software. So the first C is kind of obvious, it's the card. Now, the user stories traditionally were written on either post-it notes or index cards. Most people today use some kind of story writing tool to capture them. But the essence of the idea was that they were on cards, and the cards were easy to manipulate in a backlog, as you can imagine. But there were two key characteristics or benefits from writing these on cards. The first was simply writing it down. Having an idea of what's valuable to you, it sound good to yourself, but the moment you write it down, it made it real. And it's just like writing any other requirement down. The moment you have to write it down, you go, let me think about that a bit. The other part of the card was that the post-it notes or the cards themselves were small, usually 3 by 5 inches or 5 by 7 inches. The intent was that because the card was physically small, it kept the scope of the user story small. There was only so much real estate available to write information on about the user story. And this was important, especially because user stories emerged from a agile methodology known as extreme programming. And one of the traits of extreme programming is it used a very short iteration or sprint, 1 week. So that wasn't a lot of time to deliver that nice end-to-end functionality. So that slice had to be very, very thin if you were going to be able to deliver that. So that's the intent behind the card. First of all, basically, keep the scope small. The second one, and which I think is the most important, the second C, is the conversation. So you might say, well, there's not a lot of details on that user story, writing a couple of sentences. But the real details and information came when the team would have a conversation with a product owner or a stakeholder or whoever was intended to receive that value. So this is really important because it was not only just simply getting the details. The emphasis is on the term conversation. Conversation is two ways. So, for example, we have here where Lawrence, our product owner, has an idea that he wants a toaster. And the team is having a conversation with him, and he reads off the story to them, and now a conversation begins. And, maybe Dragon says, well, okay, we can make a really nice toaster. It can be in 24 karat plate gold. That would be really, really nice. And of course, Lawrence's response might be, are you kidding? That's massively expensive. We can't do that. And that's really overkill. I don't think anyone's going to have an appreciation for that. So Paul goes, oh, okay, well, we can make that out of cheap plastic then. That'll be, if your goal is to be very cost effective, then plastic is a perfectly good material to build a toaster out of. And again, Lawrence goes, no, we don't want the toaster to be crazy cheap. People really like to have toasters. So he says, what we should do is maybe make it out of stainless steel. And the team says, oh, okay, now we see what you want here. So what this is meant to be an example is that, first of all, through the conversation, we're able to get more details about what was required for this story. So we get the details that we need to know so we can implement that story. In this case, yeah, this toaster will have a stainless steel case. But most importantly, in my opinion, is that we achieved alignment between the product owner and the team. Had we just thrown this story over the wall from Lawrence to the team would look at it and try and interpret it and say, well, maybe we should build an expensive toaster, or maybe we should build a cheap toaster. And Lawrence wouldn't really know, or we wouldn't be able to get feedback until we actually were able to show off the toaster, which may be a long time from now. So you can see here the user stories trying to facilitate, one of the Agile Manifesto's statements, customer collaboration. The team is working with Lawrence here to really understand and become aligned with what he needs. Finally, the third C, the so-called confirmation. So we just had that nice conversation between the team and Lawrence, our product owner. We probably want to write that down someplace. And so what we can do is, as we come to agreements with the product owner or the stakeholder, we start writing these down onto the card. And a lot of people, what they do is they start writing their understanding down as this bullet list. And these become the testable criteria by which we can know that the story is done. Because in a lot of Agile methodologies, such as Scrum, for example, the team may think that they're done, but they really do need some testable criteria that says, how do we really know that we're done and that the product owner or the stakeholder is going to accept this? If we have almost like a checklist, yes, does the toaster have a stainless steel finish? Does it have an infrared heating system? Does it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? If we can have almost like that checklist of items that help us elaborate the story and become aligned with the product owner, and we can go check, yep, we've got that, check, we've got that, then these acceptance criteria help us know when we're done, and we'll get acceptance from the product owner. The beauty of these also is that they are testable, so we can actually create tests to verify, yes, that is really done. In the software world, the acceptance criteria typically become our unit acceptance tests. So this is a huge bonus for us, especially if you are doing testing on the team, to give you the inputs. What kind of tests do I have to write? So this really is an aid to test planning. So that's the so-called 3 C's of user stories. This is how we can basically take that simple sentence of, here's something as a stakeholder I want that's valuable, and through a conversation, we can elaborate it, capture it on the card, but also the fact that we keep the card small helps us maintain that idea of developing only a thin slice of functionality, which we can deliver quickly and get the feedback from our product owner and stakeholders.